I would love to talk a little bit about communication and how that can vary from culture to culture. I know that is, even just in my experience, there's been some significant differences in how different cultures communicate.
Yes, lots of conflicts, lots of tears, especially.
Yeah, lots of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the main things when we talk about culture is the communication.
Yeah.
Because communication depends on culture to culture, can be completely different. Not the way you communicate, but the way you receive communication as well. So it's always both ways. So I have some funny stories in that aspect.
Tell me.
Yeah, I think it's just more in this whole aspect of, I always, the other day I was realizing, doing an analysis of some of my ways of communicating.
Oh, an analysis.
Analysis,
yes.
That's the word. The analysis. So some of the analysis I did in my own way of communication. And then I realized, especially living in England for so long, I realized how so many times I communicated with my silence. I was trying to make people understand that I did not agree with them by being completely quiet.
Yeah.
And then
like that's a protest.
Absolutely, almost a protest, or communicating I don't like, or I don't agree, expecting that the other side would understand what I was trying to communicate, even though it was not with words. Anyway, that was really, really hard because most of the time, nobody really did not understand what I was trying to say.
No, that's true, because I think England is probably very similar to the US, where silence could be taken as agreement, or it's taken as you don't have anything to say. Because I think our cultures, the US, England, Canada, some of those cultures tend to be very individualistic, where we think in terms of everyone has a voice, everyone has something to say, and if they have something to say, they should bring it. But that's not the case for many cultures.
No, especially when it comes to cultures, what you call that is group-oriented type of culture. We tend to actually use silence as a way to communicate or to protest, or we're trying to find someone to represent us, to speak for us. So that's why it's very common in a group, especially in a meeting, you give space to everybody to speak.
Yeah.
And then the tendency for people from some cultures is not to speak. They would allow whoever they feel has more authority or more space to speak for them, or to represent their ideas. And I see people say, but nobody said anything. Why they don't say anything? Because they didn't feel they had the right to say. They feel that they probably would have someone else with more condition to communicate better than them, or even more of their position, or even authority. I don't know exactly. It's hard even to identify or to put names, but definitely it's always focused in the group. Even for myself, I realized that it's hard for me to find out what is my personal and individual opinion if I don't know the opinion of the others in the group. I always trying to find the others in order to find out my opinion, and then I can communicate.
See, this is so interesting to me because that is completely different to how I would think as an American, and I think probably a lot of Western cultures that tend to be, as I said, more individualistic, and there's always the assumption that if I have something to say, I should say it. Now, of course, there's proper time and proper ways to communicate that, and depending on who you're speaking to, but I would never think to look for someone else to communicate on my behalf. That's just not my natural inclination, because that's so different in my culture.
And which for me, that's actually very common. Even though I have like a position of authority at the moment, my inclination is always to find who is the other person that can communicate for me. If that is anyone else better than I to be able to communicate. And then when there is no other one, I might step out and then I will communicate.
Then it falls to you.
Absolutely. And then I feel like, okay, I'm the one who needs to step up and to talk. And even here where I work, in the organization of where I work, I have lots of people coming to me because they feel, because of the position, the authority I have, they can come to me and they talk to me easily than they would talk in a group setting.
Yeah.
Because they don't feel they have the right.
And they feel that you could speak on their behalf,
Absolutely.
maybe. And,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that is very common.
Yeah. But what about in like just interpersonal relationships, friendships, or family dynamics or something like that? How would that be different where, for example, my culture tends to have a high value on direct communication. So if I'm offended or hurt or something's happened, we're friends. And if something has happened between us, my culture would really value that I go directly to you. I tell you what happened, how it made me feel, and then we could talk about that together. But I know not every culture does things exactly that way. How might that be different in other cultures?
Yeah, personally, of course, I don't want to say that every culture or every Latino culture is like this, but I would say it's not easy. It's not natural to us. Because we're not direct in our communication, the tendency is to go around, and then trying to verbally process and trying to get rid of the energy within inside of us, and then hope that I'm not gonna feel that way anymore. That's kind of how it is, so that I will talk to someone, get rid of my energy, process verbally, and then, okay, if I don't have anything bad with it, anymore, I don't need to talk to that person anymore.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think, I don't know, I can't assume what the value for another culture is, but I know for me, for my culture, the value behind going directly to somebody is that's how you show respect for them. And maybe it would actually be very rude in my culture to talk about that problem with someone else and bring them into that. We call that talking behind their back and that kind of thing. But I remember when I was doing some volunteer work for an organization in another country that has another culture of communication. And they had some feedback for me. Just in areas where I could grow, which is very normal in any kind of workplace setting. Of course, they're going to have that. Yeah. But instead of giving that to me, they actually gave it to a mutual friend to give to me.
Yeah.
And their cultural value was that would be less embarrassing for me. But for me, that's way more embarrassing. I would rather have you just come, because then I feel like, why didn't you feel like you could talk to me? Like, am I scary? Am I intimidating? Like, why can't you just talk to me? Why do you have to tell this other person what you think I need to improve? But they were actually trying to be considerate of me and how they communicated.
Absolutely. The other way as well, with conflict, is you're trying to find someone else to talk on their behalf. So it's very common here to have someone which is culturally comparable to come to me and talk about their difficulties with someone else, hoping that I will be able to help in somehow resolve the conflict
kind of
with
mitigating.
this other person. Yes, but I think, and even coming together sometimes, which is, so that's something that is actually happened several times here.
That's interesting. Where it's not that we wouldn't do that ever in my cultural context, but that would be like your last resort. Like if you've really tried to work it out with someone on your own and you've talked to them and you still have this conflict, then maybe you would bring in someone else to kind of help smooth things over. So it's so interesting.
Yeah, especially leadership. I think I would say leadership as well. It's something that happened a lot. So someone comes to you because you're a leader, because you have some authority, hoping that you would deal with the problem for them.
Yeah.
This person is not doing right in this, it should go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, communication. Direct and indirect. So I think it's just learning with one another, and value one another and be able to listen, not only the words, but as well everything else, the intention, what comes behind.
And kind of going back to that whole thing of being curious and being generous, believing the best.
Asking questions.
Asking questions, exactly.
Yes.